Hello friends, welcome back to yet another tutorial about Magento 2 and its best practices. And in this tutorial I would like to show you a custom feature that we can implement for a configurable product. So as you may know, with the latest versions of Magento 2, configurable options and its Dropbox goes with additional pricing. And for some stores, for some merchants, it's not important, or even though it's important not to show additional plus $20, plus $10 and so on pricing for different options such as colors or sizes or any other text-based drop-down fields. In this tutorial, we are going to create a Magento 2 extension, and this extension will be responsible for hiding this information from a Dropbox for a configurable product. There are a couple of solutions available on the internet, and all these solutions say that from different Magento 2 developers say that let's use a preg replace, find this plus and dollar, and hide everything which goes after plus, dollar, and this price. So there are going to be only options. However, it's not a solid solution because, for example, if you change dollar to any other currency, or if you have minus, it will not work and it will continue showing these prices. So I would like to show you an alternative solution, which I believe is solid and stable for future versions of Magento 2 and for following best practices. As always, I created a basic module under appcode Pronko, and this module is configurable labels. And I have two files, registration PHP and module XML. As you see, module name is configurable labels. We are going to work and create JavaScript files. So this is going to be a front-end customization. And in order to do front-end customization, we have to work inside view front-end directory. So any changes, any implementations and logic we will create under front-end directory will be applied for a storefront part of a website. Magento configurable product module contains a logic or a file that is responsible for showing this additional pricing information in a dropdown. And this file, it's a JavaScript file, and we are going to, instead of copying this JavaScript file and modifying logic, because it's backward incompatible change, we are going to create a require.js config file, and inside we will add a mixin for this configurable product configuration JavaScript file. So we are going to extend existing logic. Instead of overriding it, we will extend it. And in order to declare a mixin, we have to use config variable inside config, another config key inside Mixins, and here we have to provide the following logic. We are going to add a mixin for a configurable product.js configurable file. This is a real file. However, here we shouldn't provide any JS extension. So this is a file we're going to add a mixin, and it's located under configurable product view frontend web.js configurable.js. So for this file, we will add our mixin, and location of this mixin is Pronko _ configurable labels / JS configurable mixin. It's a good practice to add a suffix -mixin to a original name of a file, so it's clear what this file is about. Alright, so we have a declaration of a mixin. Let's go ahead and create this mixin. So all JavaScript files should be located under web directory. This is a requirement, and optional directory is JS, so we can split JavaScript, CSS, and HTML logic. And here inside we will add a JavaScript file called configurable mixin.
I learned how to build themes and created a Mage Mastery portal. Mage Mastery is an ultimate learning resource for web developers who want to learn Magento 2 and become professional Magento 2 front-end developers. The wide variety of online courses and workshops allow you to learn Magento 2 on your own pace and study from home. I will post a link below this video so you can check out the Mage Mastery and learn something new about Magento 2.
All JavaScript files in Magento usually starts with using a define function from require.js, and this define function syntax looks the following. So we have a list of dependencies and a callback function. For the dependencies, we are going to include such dependencies as mage utils wrapper, jQuery, and finally underscore. So once we have these dependencies, we have to provide these dependencies to our callback function. So this is a wrapper, $, for jQuery, and underscore for underscore. Next, use strict, and we have to return a function. And here is our configurable component we wrote a mixin, and in order to add a mixin, we have to return a wrapper and call wrap method, provide configurable component, and a callback function for our mixin. Configurable, it's a first argument, and other arguments are arguments for original component, which is configurable. This is how our mixin looks like, and in order to make it work, we have to call original. Well, we can run this wrapper or mixin without original call. However, we have to call original configurable component. This component will render all options, and then we will inject our logic. So after all the rendering, we will inject logic. So this is kind of a first part of our task. We created a mixin for a configurable component. Then here we are going to call our custom function called reset labels, and we are going to use a configuration config sp config and attributes, because we are going to work and customize or rely on attributes data or attributes configuration that is passed from a backend to a front-end component that is configurable, and we will reset labels for given attributes. So let's go ahead and declare const reset labels, And this is going to be a function which has an argument called attributes. And here I will use jQuery. So the idea is that I will find all select fields on a page, and I will use a class super attribute select CSS class for a select field, and I will go through all options and call each function. And inside each we are going to call a function, and this function, what we're going to do here, we are going to get a value of option by using $this. We are going to read option ID from this option. I will use attr function in order to get a value from option field. And once we have select option and option ID, or just option ID, we can use underscore, and we can use each function from underscore, so we can go through all attributes which we've passed here. And for every attribute we are going to use a function. So basically here I can write attribute, and then inside I can, in order to get each attribute options, I can write attribute.options, and then I will have to use a for each. However, we can destruct our argument and write options in curly brackets, so we can get access immediately without using this additional extra attribute name. So options dot for each, and here we will use arrow function. We can, it's just an example, we can use just a function. However, like for showing that this also works, we are going to extract from option, for every single option we will extract two keys or two values. It's ID and initial label. Because this configuration contains all the information, including initial label of our label before configurable component, rendered, additional, plus pricing information. So, and here inside we're going to check that if ID of an option equals option ID, basically our option which we have here, if this is a true, we will use select option and we will modify text and we will set back our initial label. As I said, initial label is a label without any extra information like pricing, and this initial label comes from a backend, and this label is used to combine a string with actual label and with pricing. That's why this label is never changed, and if it's not changed, we can use a label for our reset labels function. And that's it. So what we have a configurable component call that is called in order to render all options. Then we call our reset labels, we pass attributes from spconfig. And for each rendered attribute, we read all options, we get option ID, and we find in attributes configuration, we find label and set this label back. So this label is set without pricing. Of course, there are other more optimal implementations of this functionality. However, this is one of the examples on how we can remove, and I believe this is a backward compatible example and future proof. So with new versions of Magento, it should not break. And the next step we have to do, in order to show this or apply changes, we have to regenerate static content. And usually, if I don't have anything configured, I just remove front-end directory and, well, view preprocessed does not contain JavaScript files, but usually I remove this directory as well. But view preprocessed, as you see, only contains less or CSS related modifications. So the only thing we have to clear is pub static frontend. And we have to make sure that configurable labels extension is configured. All right, let's go ahead and see in a browser how it works and looks like. Let's open inspect, because a static file such as JavaScript can be cached in a browser. And we want to update our JavaScript files for this page. Let's refresh a page and see the result. As we can see, we have some errors, and probably this is because I removed pub static, and I would have to clear whether cache or simply I will rerun bin Magento setup upgrade command. That will remove cache, static content, generated files, and so on. Alright, here are my top 3 debugging methods. First of all, I check that inspect console doesn't show any JavaScript errors. If it's empty, we can then continue our verification. Second, I open sources tab, open rendered files, JavaScript files, and check that my file, newly created file, is loaded. So as we can see, we have configurable mixin added, and the content of this mixin is also in place. And second, if everything is fine, I check the functionality. And as we can see, functionality works. If it doesn't work, what I do, I set a breakpoint and refresh a page to see how this logic works or debug this logic. And as we can see, we have initial label for red, and I will pass to next element. If I will call select option text, I can see that text is blue plus $10. However, after this line, after this call, we will set initial label, which is blue, to add text. So basically it will modify this text and it will remove plus $10. And as we can see, we don't use any preg replace, preg match functions, and we don't rely on any currency symbols in order to find a substring of this string. We just simply set initial label to an option that modifies our text. And as a result, you can see a clean version of a dropdown without any prices and with just labels configured from a backend, or options for an attribute which you can configure from a backend. This is it for today's tutorial. If you liked it, hit a subscribe button and like icon, so I will understand that you enjoy these tutorials and I will create more such tutorials. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next video.